Good afternoon and welcome back to another ironic introduction to another video. I am excited to finally be doing a ability rundown and guide to Ghost. And I want this to be as comprehensive as possible, so there's a lot going to be going on here. Just if you're wondering like why now, one of my friends actually pulled a 5-star Ghost and is learning how to play her. And that was the fire I needed to say, you know what, it's finally time I sit down and I do a full explanation on this champion, everything I've learned and everything I've gathered so far, because I think there's so much to this champion. And it's incredibly complex. So this video, unlike a lot of my other guides, is actually going to be rather different in the description. It won't just be timestamps because I'm actually going to post my entire note sheet for Ghost that I'll be using to make this video in the description as well. But I will have my standard timestamps of the ability rundown. I will have my timestamps for kind of when I do my talk through of all of my notes, talking about the playstyles, etc. I'll go through the notes from top to bottom. I'll make sure it's organized in that way. And then after that, I have 2 videos for Ghost, and those 2 videos we'll be kind of covering a lot of what I have in my notes, kind of just showing you so you can see it too, because for Ghost, just listening to it isn't enough. You really got to see it sometimes to kind of understand, because there's just so much to this champion. I think that she's very, very easy to learn and very, very difficult to master. So getting as much kind of visual representation is incredibly important. So that said, I'm going to jump right into the ability rundown, and I'm actually going to be in more depth in this. It's not just going to be me reading the abilities this time, because I think each one needs to be touched on as we go. So first up is the awakened ability. Her awakened ability is that you start the fight phased and you generate power each time the opponent misses. Opponents miss whenever they attack into you while you're phased. So her abilities are that you dash back and you begin phasing for 2 seconds. Phasing won't activate if Ghost is afflicted with an armor break debuff or has a precision passive. It's incredibly important to remember those 2 things, because if you phase, you automatically gain a precision passive, or if you special 1, you gain 3 precision passives. So that means after phasing and after special 1ing, you have to either hit the opponent 1 or 3 times respectively in order to drop all those precision passives. In order to be able to phase again. So, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, I phased and then I tried to dash back to phase again and it didn't work. And it's probably because you haven't actually made contact with the opponent yet. Additionally, while phasing, incoming attacks have a 100% chance to miss, and each damage over time debuff on Ghost converts to a Fury passive, increasing attack rating by, it's about, I want to say half. I think it's like 60% or something of her attack. It's a really, really solid boost. You'll notice it significantly, and I should point out that stacks with suicides. Upon phasing, gain a precision passive for 6 seconds. So you could also wait out the 6-second passive in order to be able to phase again, and there are going to be instances where you will actually find yourself waiting out that 6-second timer. So do be mindful that you don't necessarily have to hit the opponent if for some reason you find yourself in a position where you want to be phased, but you also don't want to be hitting the opponent for some reason. Additionally, the Ghost can only crit through her abilities, so either her specials or phasing for the guaranteed crits, and she cannot land crits elsewise. So all of her other attacks are non-crits, which is going to come up when I talk about the Mr. Sinister matchup. Phasing is immediately deactivated when Ghost initiates an attack or blocks an attack. So this is incredibly important because the initiates an attack doesn't actually mean like the moment you dash in. It's specifically the moment the animation of Ghost begins the attack. So as long as she's like dashing in, she's not actually attacking yet, she remains phased. So that's actually really useful, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Next up, critical hits cannot be evaded, so it's good to remember that as long as you have that precision passive, that she is an anti-evade champion. It does kind of screw up the playstyle a little bit if you're used to like the 3 or 4 hit counters, but it is still a really, really good option for a lot of champions. And then non-critical hits have a 10% chance to gain a cruelty buff, increasing crit damage rating for 20 seconds, and this stacks up to 5. And it's important to point out that the cruelty buffs are an actual active buff, so those trigger things like spite and can be nullified, etc. But the precision passive is not an active buff, and so that doesn't trigger spite, and that doesn't can't be nullified, etc. And that's important because if you're playing like a one-hit ghost gameplay, you can actually use her relatively effectively against spite nodes. So just be mindful of that. Next up, the special one. Oh, sorry, this is important. The heavy attack. So when you heavy attack with Ghost, you have a 50% chance to gain a Fury buff for 10 seconds, granting a pretty good amount of attack as a bonus, and the chance to gain a cruelty buff on a heavy non-critical hit increases the longer the heavy attack is charged. So do be mindful that if you like phase and then parry and then charge a heavy, that first hit has a flat 50% chance to gain a Fury buff, and it can't be boosted because it's guaranteed crit. So just kind of if you're doing the math on that there. But then you have Special Attack 1. You gain 3 precision passives on the Special 1. For the most part, you won't be using an SP1 ever, unless the fights are very short and you can just end it on a Special 1. But that is important to know that after a Special 1, you can't phase right away. So if you SP1, you have to do standard playstyle of blocking, etc., or at least stall out for 6 seconds. And when triggered immediately upon phasing, each hit is a guaranteed critical. Both her Special 1 and her Special 2 have this, and I'll show you in the video how that works. But essentially, you phase immediately Special 1 or immediately Special 2, and you typically run Wasp synergy, or you get really, really good at special intercepting, I call it. Or maybe other people call it that too, but that's what I call it. Next up for the Special 2, you gain a Cruelty buff, increasing critical damage rating for 20 seconds, then refresh all Cruelty buffs generated by Ghost. Additionally, this Special 2 hits crazy hard. I mean, this is your bread and butter of damage with Ghost. This is the reason why people play her, and I should note that the Special 2 can actually be mitigated, the recoil damage when you run suicides. And then finally, the Special 3, each cruelty buff generated by Ghost converts to a permanent cruelty passive stack up to 5. You don't really use this that much, but I'll show you that in the video as well. It'll come up, and you know, sometimes you find yourself in a position where you just have to use a Special 3. So that said, I will put a timestamp here. First, you know, the standard Quantum Trinity is Ant-Man for boosted damage, Wasp for unblockable specials, and Hood for no damage while phasing. So I'll get into those on their own because those are rather complicated. But for now, I'm going to stick a timestamp in the description here. Because there's just a lot to go on, and first I need to just kind of like hammer out some of the important factors. So here, starting at the top of my list, my notes list is what happens when you start the fight awaken versus unawakened. So this bit where it says at the start of the fight begin phasing for 2 seconds is incredibly important because that means you can start every fight and you don't even have to do anything to the screen. You can just let the opponent hit into you and begin countering into them back. But if you are unfazed at the start of the fight, you're essentially going to want to start every fight either by blocking or by dodging back. Dodging back is better because that will begin phasing, but you're going to see that unawakened, the AI integration when you dodge back is kind of wonky and can cause a lot of frustration and headache. So I find that awakened really removes that frustration and headache, but there's actually a higher value for awakening, and there's actually a reason why. My Ghost is Sig 80 in particular. When I have the Sig stones to bring her higher, I've been trying to find the sweet spot. So this is for a 5-star Ghost. You'll notice that no matter what star, the general percentage is the same because you don't really get more than that. I mean, if they move this number up, Ghost would be crazy insane as you get a higher tiered version of her. But essentially at Sig 1, you generate 2% of max power every time the opponent misses. At max level, Sig level, you get 5%. So if you think about that, like if you're dodging or missing typically 2 to 3 hits from an opponent, at max Sig, that's, you know, 15% of a bar of power. That's almost half a bar of power for 3 hits, or a third of a bar of power for 2 hits, and it's actually really, really fast ramp up time. So I think a lot of people undervalue the Sig level here, but I think the biggest thing here is kind of like how much this is actually affecting you. So at level 1, Sig level 1, the Awakening Gem, that's the highest value. You definitely just get access to this ability, but you'll see here at Sig 60, you're getting about 2.92 or almost 3%, and at Sig 80, you're getting just above 3%. You're getting almost like 3.2. you're getting 3.2. That's the rounding there on Sig 80. And so I found when I played her at Sig 20 that the rate at which I was gaining power when the opponent was hitting into me, it felt kind of subpar. I felt like no matter what, it was unavoidable. I found myself having to do a parry playstyle just to parry once or twice to reset the AI aggression, and I'll be able to explain that in a moment. So I brought her up to Sig 60, and I found occasionally if I took like a 3-hit or 4-hit absorb and then did an intercept here or there, that I was able to avoid taking any damage and then do a special 2 to end the fight. And now at Sig 80, I find that I can relatively consistently build up to a special 2 without having to reset the AI aggression. And it makes for a really good time. And the reason I think I might bring her up to Sig 100 is so that I can stop running the Wasp synergy. I personally think that the higher the Sig level on her, the easier it is to land that first special 2. And once you've landed that first special 2, like juggling the AI aggression is a lot easier when you can kind of get into a rhythm. And not having to reset the AI aggression before you land your first special 2 makes a really big difference in playing this champion. So that's why I have mine at Sig 80. I really highly value that, and the truth is that when you're using her in longer fights, you really do want that higher Sig level. It makes a big difference. But definitely as far as champions go, she definitely doesn't need to be awakened to be the absolute monster that she is. She doesn't need to be high Sig to be the absolute monster she is. I think just that she benefits from both. So if you love her as a champion as much as I do, I think you should highly consider investing those resources in her, because I think that eventually I will have a Sig 200 Ghost, probably as my like second max Sig champion, to be honest. So that said, I want to go over why suicides. And so why suicides is very, very simple. It's the fact that when you phase, you convert damage over time buffs into fury passives, and when awakened, you do that at the start of every fight. You don't even take any damage, you just start the fight with fury passives. And even unawakened, you can just start the fight by dodging, and you should be able to do it quickly enough that you don't take any damage from suicides. So you aren't taking any damage from suicides, and you're getting 60% bonus damage for free. There's almost, there's really no need to explain the logic behind that. But the second reason is that she has full recoil nullification with the hood. If you only use special 2s and special 3s because they don't inflict recoil, but special 2, you can actually prevent the recoil damage from triggering. It still triggers, you just don't take it because you're phased. And I'll show you that in the video as well. I managed to do it a couple times. It's just very tricky, but it is very doable. Next up, I want to talk about the actual synergies and the benefits of these since we're here. So these synergies, you want to think about the reasons. So Ant-Man, people run for like longer content like Labyrinth of Legends, but it's definitely out of all 3 synergies the one with no utility. This is just strictly raw damage. But if you run the Ant-Man synergy, you're definitely going to feel like crazy amounts of increased damage. Wasp synergy is generally known as the like must-have ghost synergy. This makes your special attacks unblockable when you triggered them while phasing. So essentially, if you dash back and use your special, it will make your special unblockable, and it makes landing that special 2 incredibly easy because you don't have to worry about intercepting. And this is definitely something I recommend for new players before you kind of like wean yourself off of it as you find that you want more champions in your roster or your lineup, or maybe you don't have a 5-star Wasp and you're trying to use Ghost to clear Act 6. I definitely think that understanding the value of this, that this makes it easy, but you don't need Wasp synergy. It's almost a crutch, I would say. It's a very, very nice and handy crutch, but it's definitely not necessary because it doesn't offer any value besides making landing that special super easy. And then this hood synergy, this one's really crazy. The utility here in mitigating recoil damage, nullifying it, and the fact that essentially you can tank special 3s with the hood synergy. So if you phase and then the opponent uses a special 3, you'll take 0 damage because you're phased while the special 3 is active. So just kind of something to be aware. Those are the synergies. Next up, I want to talk about nodes, so just kind of node responses. So she's really good against any damage over time effect, biohazard, this cold snap / incinerate node, I forget what it's called. Those ones you just have to be mindful that as soon as you trigger the dot, you want to dash back and phase so that you can convert it into a fury, and in that way she actually really benefits. She's also good in matchups where you trigger dots on yourself like Morningstar every time you hit into them, or Scarlet Witch, because both the poison and the bleeds can be immediately phased for free damage. She's also really good against stun and limber, since essentially she responds by almost pseudo intercepting the opponents mid combo, so you almost never actually have to stun them, unless you're trying to get like a heavy or a really big special off. And then, Ghost really just is pretty much counters almost everything in the game, and it's a really good time. That's why we see so many of these anti-crit champions, specifically for Ghost. And I do want to comment about Fisticuffs. Fisticuffs does not prevent her from phasing, so she still gets the phase, and she still gets the guaranteed crit against Fisticuffs, because it's not considered an active buff. Phasing is not a buff, it's just a triggered ability. And then Caltrops. Caltrops, if you phase, the first Caltrops bleed is converted into a fury. So if you keep dashing back, you're going to trigger up bleeds and be taking a lot of damage, but you can dash back once to phase, get that bonus fury, and then counter the opponent. So in War, Fisticuffs and Caltrops is a really good time if you're a good Ghost player, and they are, pseudo easy. So next up, I want to talk about medium counter, light counter. So you can let the opponent hit into you while you're phased, and you can either counter with a medium or a light. Generally speaking, you want to counter with a medium. It's got longer range. It's just as fast for the most part because of the phase mechanic. But sometimes you want to hit back with a light, namely when you're fighting things like a Korg, or maybe you're trying to push a thing into a special timing window. And so it's just important to know that light attacks do generate less power. So there are reasons for using light attacks instead, namely Korg and Thing. There's really not that many reasons, but I felt the need to mention it since it is important. And then you have either a 1-hit, a 2-hit, or a 3-hit absorb and counter. It's really like almost impossible to counter after a 4-hit combo / you're playing like really knife's edge there. A 3-hit combo counter where you absorb 3 and then counter after that is just risky because you run the risk of the opponent doing a double medium. And if that's the case and you don't have fast reactions, you're going to find yourself getting punished for trying to wait for a 3rd hit. 1-hit combo is the safest for the most part because you don't have to worry about your phase window ending, and 2-hit combos is the best because you generate the most amount of power when you have an awakened Ghost. But if your Ghost is unawakened, there's no reason to wait for 2 attacks unless you're just trying to get used to the timing, because it is a good habit to get into. But otherwise, the awaken ability, every time you absorb in a hit, have the opponent miss a hit, you are gaining that power gain. So generally speaking, the standard playstyle for Ghost is 2-hit, 2 misses, and then counter. But I wanted to mention the 3 and the 4 because, again, sometimes you'll find yourself in a position where you don't want to hit the opponent, but you still want to absorb as much of the phase before dodging backwards, etc. Next up, you have 1-tap counters. So when you hit the opponent, you can hit them with one medium or 1 light. You have a 2-hit combo, which is hitting them back with 2 attacks. I don't like 3-hit combos. I think the timing is really poor, and what it does to the AI aggression is very weird. But I really am a huge fan of 4-hit combos because that allows you to get the maximum amount of hits back in. It keeps the AI nice and aggressive, and then you still have the benefit of phasing back without getting immediately punished like you would and potentially taking block damage if you did a 5-hit combo, because on a 5-hit combo you usually have to parry instead, and that's really not ideal because you don't want to take block damage with Ghost since you can just phase most hits. Next up, I mentioned synergies already, so those will be in my notes, but that's just because of the videos. You also need to know about special 1 and special 2 intercepting. So the die roll option there is to just kind of essentially stall a little bit after hitting the opponent and then immediately go for a potential special intercept, but then you run the risk of defensive AI. It's better to get really comfortable with AI aggression because especially early on in shorter fights, the AI tends to stay more aggressive when you're facing higher PI opponents, and special intercepting is much tougher when you're fighting weaker opponents like master difficulty. This is only for epic difficulty content where the AI stays nice and aggressive. So special 1 intercepting if the fight's really short and you want to do a special 1 to end the fight, or special 2 intercepting if the fight's typically medium or longer, and the special 2 will end the fight. Both of those are a very good time. And sometimes you just special 3 because you find yourself in a position where you are generating power via like maybe your phased ability, or maybe you can't hit into the opponent because you're trying to bait a special and you push into a special 3. Know that it's just fine to push a special 3. Just make sure you still dash back in special 3 to trigger that extra cruelty buff. Some other points I need to touch on is that the extra phase, she stays phased even while dashing in until the moment she goes to actually kick. So you can punish traditionally unpunishable specials this way. So you've got, sorry, I dropped my thing. You've got like Magneto as a really good example that you can't punish his special 1 normally, but with Ghost you actually can, because you can dash in while he's throwing the rock at you. She's a really good anti-evade champion. Just know that when you're going up against anti-evade, you're essentially only doing 1 tap combos. And then I'll show you the Quantum 5 team, which is what your like standard Labyrinth of Legends team layout looks like. And then I will show you the potion farming team. The one I think is faster, more efficient. If Ghost is like your highest ranked champion and you want to farm potions, this is the team I use because I think that it just works a little bit better. And then you have AI aggression and resetting. You have a playstyle called playing the phase or safe parry. So when you, for some reason, like maybe you can't hit the opponent, or you lost your phase, so you still have the precision puff. Playing the phase is when you phase and you like really use the whole timer. So either like taking as many misses as you can, like if you're phasing through a special attack before like last second blocking so that you don't get hit, or maybe like the opponent's playing really defensive while you're phased and you just kind of like stall out for as long as possible, hoping that they'll dash in at the last second and then you can hit them. Or safe parry. And safe parry is, you phase and the opponent immediately dodged backwards and you don't want to accidentally get hit because for any reason like you think the phase is going to time out. You can just go for a standard parry when the opponent dashes in next, and you don't actually have to let them miss. You can just parry. And I think that a lot of people forget that about Ghost is you can just block. You don't have to necessarily only phase. If you find yourself in a dicey situation, don't be afraid to block and take some block damage. And then finally, the full run mechanic. So sometimes you're in a situation where you absolutely have to respond with a phase. One example is stun immune. One example is limber if you've accidentally parried them too many times, or perhaps anyone who has like an applies an on hit trouble. So Annihilus is a really good example. If you're using Ghost versus Annihilus, you absolutely don't want to take any kind of blocks from Annihilus because it'll trigger armor block and then you're just SOL. So the full run mechanic is essentially you only dodge the opponent until your phase is up, and then you phase, and then you can counter into him again. And I have some gameplay of that as well. And then I want to mention that you have your right side screenplay for accidental block. So when you go to phase or you go to dash backwards, be mindful that sometimes if you block, that will drop the phasing. So like if you're trying to say dodge backwards from a Winter Soldier and you don't want to potentially get hit by the melee attacks because you're close proximity, you can always phase back using the right side of your screen and you won't accidentally trigger the block that way. Additionally, if you're trying to like say punish Magneto's rocks or any other specials that you normally can't punish but you can punish because you're phased, you're going to want to dash in with the right side of the screen so that you don't accidentally block any part of the special there as well. And then 3 big touch points here is Ghost versus Mr. Sinister. I think Ghost actually counters Mr. Sinister perfectly because one, it's not like he heals off of the crit. He just takes significantly reduced damage. So you can actually phase through his special 1, phase through his special 2, but typically you're going to want to phase the special 1 since the concussion can cause you problems elsewise. And then you can just do a standard like parry, heavy, and regular combos into him, and he won't be healing at all because they're guaranteed non-crits. You build up those cruelty passives, you do some huge fury gains, and then you can put in a special 2 here or there just for some big damage. But for the most part, you honestly just use a special 3 every time because the special 3 won't crit and you'll get free damage from it. Ghost versus armor break on hit. This is risky, but sometimes you find yourself in a situation like war or questing where you're up against like an Iron Fist or an Annihilus, and if they have armor break on hit, the biggest thing is to employ the full run mechanic for things like Annihilus, or use a safe parry for things like Iron Fist, because it's better to be safe and take some block damage than it is to take an armor break and find yourself in a really bad spot. But if you are for any reason armor break, remember that you just can't phase, so as long as you play Ghost like a regular champion from there, you're not going to run into any major problems, and you can just wait out the armor break and then proceed with your standard phase playstyle. And then Ghost versus ability accuracy reduction, so namely Magneto, Domino, those kinds of playstyles. Just be mindful that you need to watch and make sure you actually get the phase before you allow the opponent to dash in and miss, because you can't assume your first phase is going to work, but you can assume it will trigger eventually, and when it does trigger, that's when you have your window. So that said, let me jump into these videos. I do apologize, this took a huge amount of time. So that is the talk through, and so now we have video number 1. So video number 1, I'm up against Winter Soldier, and I should say that I'm actually running Ghost, Wasp, Hood, Ant-Man, and Yellow Jacket. Actually, you know what, before I run this, it's important, let me show you this one first. So this is the traditional 5. So the traditional 5 here is Ghost with Ant-Man. So with Ant-Man, you get 15% attack boost for each buff on Ghost, so all the cruelty passives, the precision passive does not count, but the cruelty buffs do, and the active furies additionally are even bigger. So this is a huge one. You get a lot of damage from this. Next up, you have Wasp synergy. And you run Wasp synergy to make your specials unblockable, and especially in longer fights, this is really important. Next up, you have Hood. This is for that recoil mitigation that we talked about. And then finally, we have Yellow Jacket here. So Yellow Jacket has all champions gain 6% attack. He has this synergy with Ant-Man, and actually on the other side, he has plus 5% attack with Ant-Man as well. It's actually higher if you have a 4 or 5-star version, but I don't. So that's what it is. And then the modification I make here for the potion farming team is I slot in a Black Panther Civil War. Sorry, this is not a sponsored video. These ads are just the video player I have. I slot in Black Panther Civil War here because if I click here, you can see that Black Panther actually has this synergy for a plus 115 critical damage rating. And that bonus crit damage is really, really nice, especially when you're potion farming. Every little bit of damage matters. And I'm swapping it in for the Hood synergy because the truth is, again, if you're potion farming, you don't really care about staying healthy. You only care about the fights ending faster, so you really don't need to be mitigating recoil. You can just eat the recoil damage every single time. So that said, let me put a timestamp in the description here as well. So this is video number 1. So we're going to go in here with Ghost. So I start off phased. So, and you see here he did 2 hits. I'm going to do a medium hit counter, and then I phase again. He plays super defensive, so I go for a parry 3-hit combo. I'm kind of like trying to reset the AI. Again, he's playing defensive, so I reset again with a parry 3-hit combo. So essentially, you don't want to do like a parry 1-hit. You want to make sure when you parry, if you're trying to reset the AI aggression, that you do enough hits to still be hitting him once he comes out of the stun. This is typically 3 or 4 hits, and then you phase, and then usually 1 or 2 rotations of that should reset the AI aggression, and you'll be good to go. So next up, I do a 2-hit combo just to kind of show you when you do a 2-hit combo, it works really well. There I did a 1-hit, bait the special and dodge. So here I'm just pushing out through a little bit, and I'm actually going to use the Wasp synergy for a big special too. So again, just kind of showing that here, you can see that I get the unblockable by tapping in, and if you watch right there, I actually phase for like a brief second. So it's immediately phase, immediately special, and that's how you trigger the unblockable special 2 for guaranteed 3 crits. So here I'm doing, a 1-hit combo just to show you, and I keep doing this because I wanted to show you that. So if you notice there, I'm doing light attacks here, and he dashes in, and it's going fine, but when he does a double light, I actually get clipped, and that's because the light attack has a really short range. So just kind of based on the frames, etc., sometimes you can get really whiffed by that, so you generally don't want to do lights, but it's important to know your options because sometimes these things come up. So here, I block the special just to push through, and then I'm actually going to special 2 here again just to show you the Wasp synergy, and here I attempt to phase the recoil, and it doesn't actually work. If you watch my first special 2, I did phase the recoil properly. It's just the timing on it is very short, and you don't want to like spam dashing back because you won't get it. you want to like really get really good at the timing, and then maybe do like 1 or 2 dodge backs in order to properly handle it. So here I should go in for another special 2. I'm just doing like 2-hit combos, etc. And I'm playing the phase as much as I can. So here I go for a special 2. And you can see here that I actually dodge the recoil damage. I phase it. So here, special 2, and then phased. And you can see the recoil triggers over here, but I don't actually take any damage. And now I'm employing kind of a full run tactic to get the phase. And now I bait the special properly, and I can dash back in. And again, you know, there's just a lot going on here, so I want to show you this. So here, dodge the special 2. So here you can see I let the phase trigger. I have the precision passive going. He's got a special 2. I'm pretending like he has a special 3. So essentially all I'm doing is repeatedly dodging back and then repeatedly triggering the phase. I punish the special 2 and I can punch back in. So that's what I call like the full run mechanic. So you don't actually have to do that against Winter Soldier here, but if this was a regular Winter Soldier, you might do that full run mechanic to bait the special, and it is a good option there. So here, I think I actually end the video in a couple seconds here. I'm just kind of trying to show you one last thing, which is the heavy chains against the wall. So now that I have him up against the wall, I do 2 mediums, parry, and then heavy. And then as long as he's got less than a bar of power, you can actually heavy combo him up against the wall. So let me show you that again. So he specials, he's out of power, I have him up against the wall. So I do 2 mediums, parry, and then I can chain a heavy right into another heavy. And you can see I get the Furies there, and if I didn't have 3 special power bars there, I actually would have been able to punish him really heavy with a special 2, but I can't there just because of the extra damage. But that is a really good way to get a lot of damage, and especially if you're playing like against Mr. Sinister, you might find yourself with Mr. Sinister up against the wall, chaining heavies against him for that free extra damage. So that is video number 1. I should mention that the chaining heavies bit is really only best when you're running Wasp synergy, because it's much tougher to land the like punishing special 2 after chaining heavies if you're not running Wasp synergy. So then I have one more video here with kind of a play-by-play that we'll go through, because again, there's just a lot going on. So I want you guys to get some kind of, you know, gameplay content to understand what's going on. So here I do a 3-hit combo. I get lucky with the AI aggression. A 2-hit combo to kind of bait him back into an easier play. That's a 3-hit combo because I'm trying to bait the special. Because if you do like the 4-hit combo, they are not always that aggressive. I get the special 1 intercept here, and you can see I have 3 precision charges. So I have to release all of those before I can phase again. Here I can phase, dodge the special 1, and then I can go back in. And I should mention here in this one that I'm not running Wasp synergy. So that's why I have to get the special intercept. So that was a special 1 intercept I showed you there. So now I'm going in. I have the special 2. And you can see I kind of stalled a little bit, waited for him to do an attack in, and then I was able to land the special 2 intercept. And this is the one that's more important. So I'm going to replay this. So I have him backed up against the wall. He goes ahead and uses a special 1. And so now I punch him twice, wait for that window to open, and then I special 2. Other options there are to do like a 4-hit combo. I'm personally a fan of the 4-hit combo into the special intercept. And then you could punish. Here I was playing the phase. I let both the melee attacks swing through and then only dodge the bullets because that's when my phase window was going to end. So now he's going to special. And then I dash back in, and then I'm trying to get the special 2 intercept there, and you can see he actually dodged back. So this is kind of where you have to wonder like how you're playing it. So this is based on the pause and then special attempt, and you can see when they switch to a defensive playstyle, it doesn't work. So it's better to get really good at AI aggression, and this really only happens in longer fights. This is why particularly in longer fights you want Wasp synergy, because in shorter fights they stay aggressive, but in longer fights they switch it up a lot more, so you do actually have to worry about the AI switching to that defensive profile. So I punch into him again. I'm trying to rebuild and ramp up. Let's see what happens. I don't have this video memorized. My apologies. So here I'm doing the full run. So now I have phase up. He dashes in and I can punish. And then there again, I get my special 2 intercept. You notice that there's no unblockable tag. I do properly phase the recoil there. I'm doing the full run here. trying to get to the phase. I proc the phase here and he goes full defensive. So again, I'm doing a full run mechanic, just kind of showing you guys that. I'm phased here and then he's still playing super passive and I'm up against the wall. So I go for a safe parry and then punish the special one accordingly with the phase. And here you see I get that nice special one intercept because I saw a really good opening, but now I can't phase. So I need to play the fight normally or I need to wait out the window. So here I waited out the window. He dashes in, and this is really important. So this is what I think trips up a lot of people, is this next part here. A lot of people, their phase window ends and they start to panic, but you can see here this is playing the phase all the way to the last second. So the last second I play the phase, and you can see here there's just a sliver of the phase left. He dashes in and goes aggressive, and I'm able to counter without taking any block damage, and that's generally just a good time. So we dodge a special one here, and again, I know a lot of this is repetitive, but I think it's important to see it a lot and have that video content. So again, I get the special 2 intercept here, and you just get that by having the AI aggression. Essentially, if they're not up against the wall, you can count on the AI being a little more aggressive, and if you have really good reaction speed, you can essentially just always react, but I don't have that reaction speed. So the way I do it is I dash back using my right thumb, and then I use my left thumb to tap the special if they move in. And if they don't move in, I try to not. So again, a little bit of heavy chaining here up against the wall, and then I get pushed into a special 3. So here, now I'm just kind of showing you general content. I'm going to use the special 3 because it's always good to see the animation, and I want you to pay attention to the top left here, where you'll see I do get that permanent cruelty passive. So that's this one here. This can go up to 5. So theoretically, you want to ramp those up, but most people don't bother because the fights will end before you can ramp those up. But in like Labyrinth of Legends, and I imagine in Abyss of Legends, people will be ramping 5 of those because those 5, passive, permanent cruelty buffs are going to be like a really big deal. So now I'm trying to wait out a special 2 here, and I can punish accordingly. I think I'm trying to get one more special 2 intercept here. And here you can see I played the phase out properly, but I got, especially after a special, this is like something that happens very often. If the AI specials and then you punish into them, if you don't do like a 4-hit combo, a lot of times they switch to like this really frustrating passive AI. So just be mindful that you reset the AI aggression after a special, because for some reason they switch to a really passive defensive, and if you go for the special 2 intercept, a lot of times you'll just miss it. So I believe I'm actually trying to end this one on a special 1 intercept, and you see there he did the backdraft dash in. I got lucky there. I definitely didn't deserve that one, but that is all of my content here on Ghost. So I'll post my notes in the description. I'll do what I can to put timestamps for the videos, kind of showing what's in each video so you can kind of mitigate through it. But there's just a lot to this champion, and that's just really how it goes. That said, I really enjoy her. If you have any questions or anything I can detail on, feel free to ask. If you feel like there's something major I missed, let me know, because like I said, this champion is very complex. There's a lot going on, so I want to make sure that all that information is out there. Other than that, sorry for taking so long, but hey, it usually does. I'll talk to you all later.